We have a guest this week, Chris Hudspeth. So Chris is a friend of mine. As you all know, I'm trying to bring on guests that are really good in certain areas because I'm sure you all love listening to the sound of my voice, but I don't. And I think we can all learn from a variety of people who have skills in certain areas. So Chris is probably one of the most skilled people I've seen when it comes to online webinars, especially evergreen webinars. He's really well polished and he understands marketing really well. We had Tyson last week, who was great. We talked about automations and follow-up sequences, and Chris will talk a lot about lead gen and webinars. And he's just a deep well of information and wisdom. So I want to bring him on to talk about his experiences and the stuff he can teach us. Chris, I'm going to give you the mic, and Paul can manage the crew here if needed afterwards. But Chris, take it away.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate that and appreciate the kind words with that. I feel blessed because I became a marketing person before I became a financial planner. So I feel like I have an advantage that most financial advisors, most folks don't necessarily have. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Got a couple of slides that we can work with. How to grow your assets under management using webinars. Can anybody hear?
Yep,
Everybody can see this okay?
Yep.
Yeah. So that's what we're talking about today. And before I found the industry for financial planning and for life insurance and for assets under management, I was a marketer. And so I spent a little over 10 years really being obsessed with why people chose the choices that they make, especially when it comes to spending money buying products. And that's always been my obsession is, okay, has anybody here ever had someone say, yep, this is perfect. This is just what I want. I'm going to do this. And then that person makes a different choice. They choose something that they do something completely different, or what they said they were going to do doesn't match up with what they do. And I know it's real because I do that myself, and I find myself doing that. And I've always been fascinated with why is that the case? And so there's a lot of psychology behind that process, and that led me to building sales funnels. And I know you guys have had some speakers on this meeting talking a lot about sales funnels and different aspects of the sales funnel. And so what I'm going to contribute today is a piece of our sales funnels, and that is the webinar portion. So quickly, let me grab my sales funnel example here. Can everybody see my sales funnel here? Okay. So when people talk about lead generation, they talk about when they talk about growing assets under management, they talk about lead generation. And the end result is I want a prospect meeting. And there's a middle part in here that kind of gets missed. And I'm going to talk about how I fill that middle part with a mechanism that runs on its own on autopilot. So we'll dive right into it. First of all, I am Chris Hudspeth. You can find me on linkedin.com/in/Chris Hudspeth. I know you've had some people talking recently about LinkedIn and about the power that's behind it. And I'm going to skip over that part because you guys have had a lot of talk. What I'm going to talk about today is what to do. Okay, let's say you find a lead on LinkedIn, or let's say you're utilizing LinkedIn to fill your sales funnel. What happens after that? So feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn/in/Chris Hudspeth, and we'll get started. So let's talk about the real way to grow assets under management. If you spend just a little time on the internet, you'll hear lead generation companies making offers to fill your pipeline. I think we've all seen the advertisements. You'll be up to your armpits in AUM leads. And that's good. But there's more to it. Bonus secret number one, write this down. Lead generation for AUM is not hard. It's not hard at all to generate leads to grow your AUM. For financial advisors to grow their assets under management with new clients, to grow their AUM with new clients, the lead generation for that is not hard. What is hard, however, is converting those leads into people who want to reach out to you. That's the hard part. And the hard part typically falls on us, the advisor. Turning leads into people who are actually pursuing you for more information. People who walk up to you, tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, I want to talk more with you about my money. That part, turning a lead into that person, that's the hard part. And most lead generation companies leave that part out. They get to the lead, and most people who are in the business of taking a lead and converting it into someone who wants to buy a product from us, we skip that part too. It's a commonly overlooked area, and that's where we take a look at this funnel map. So over to the left, we have our lead generation. This is where we're going to get strangers who don't know anything about us. This is how we're going to introduce them into our funnel and create a lead. At this point, they become a lead. But it's not until this point down here where they get to the part where they want to reach out and tap us on the shoulder and say, hey, I want to talk to you about my money. Let's schedule a time to talk, or let's schedule a call or a Zoom, whatever. It's not till down here they do that. And so you have this part in the middle that gets overlooked. And it's overlooked a lot. And that's where so many people struggle to take a lead and convert that into a piece of business. Now, some numbers that you might have heard from lead generation companies is they say about 2% of the leads that you get are going to turn into business. And that number is true, but it's unclear because they're right. About 2% of the leads that you get are already warm and they're already really over here. They're already to the point where, okay, I'm ready to talk to somebody, 2 out of 100. So really what you're getting from those leads is you're getting leads that really are already prospects. They just need someone to know and trust in order to solve their problem. So they're already really here. The number that fascinated me was 40%. There's 40% of leads that have 2 of the 3 buying criteria. Those 3 buying criteria are they have a need for my product, they have the money to buy my product, and they're ready to decide whether or not to buy it right now. 2 out of 100 have all 3. They need my product, they can afford it, and they're ready to decide to buy it. They're ready to talk to me. Another 40 out of 100, another 40% have a need for my product and can afford it. They're just not here yet. They're still over here. They need to be brought to this point. They need to be nurtured to get over here so that they want to talk to me. When we get leads, they're about here. On the 1 to 10 hot scale, they're about a 3. Any lead that we get is about a 3. But when we sit down to talk with those prospects, when we're on a Zoom call or if we're sitting across the desk, by the time that happens, that lead has warmed up to the point where they become a prospect. And for definition purposes, a prospect is a lead who has initiated contact with us to start talking about stuff. That's when they graduate from a lead to a prospect. When that happens, they have warmed to about an 8 on the 1 to 10 hot scale. When a lead warms up to an 8, they become a prospect. For this to happen, the lead has to be warmed. There's a evolution. They have to be carried from the 3 to the 8. How do we do that? How do we take that person who has expressed initial interest into our funnel and deliver them to the point where they've warmed up to that part where they say, all right, I'm ready to talk to this person about my money. Often this process is done manually. And usually for most lead generation companies, they stop here at the 3 and they say, all right, man, there's your lead, go get them. And it becomes a manual process for the advisor to call, manually email, somehow to nurture that lead up to an 8. But there is a better way. And I was obsessed with finding it because I am exceptionally, glorifyingly lazy. I don't like the manual follow-up. I don't like reaching out. I don't like chasing clients. I don't like chasing leads. I don't do it at all. Instead, what I would prefer to do is set up a system that would nurture my leads so that they reach out to me once they warm up to an 8. Once they get to this 8, they warm up to this period, I want to nurture them and I want to do it on autopilot so that I don't have to do that process manually and I can tap into that 40% of those leads who are qualified. They have the money and the need for the product. They just aren't ready to talk to me yet. I want to nurture them, get them to that 8 so I can talk to them and expand my book of business. And the way to do that is with webinars. The way to warm up leads on autopilot is the utilization of webinars, namely recorded webinars. I do live webinars also like this one, but namely what we're looking at is recorded webinars. Webinars are like seminars that run 24/7 all over the country. So has anyone here ever done seminars talking about any type of product that you sell, any type of service or product that you sell? Have anybody done seminars, educational workshops, dinner seminars, weekend seminars, anything like that? Has anybody here ever done those?
A little bit more.
Yeah. And so a lot of financial advisors, a lot of retirement planners, a lot of folks like that, they lean on seminars as a great way to get in front of a handful, typically about 20 or so, quality people to talk to and present. And the effort there is to get prospects, have people raise their hand and say, I want to talk to you about more about what we talked about on this presentation. Webinars are the same thing, except we're doing it 24/7 all over the country and in a recorded fashion. And doing that causes the information that we're giving to become very low threshold. Financial advisors are using webinars to warm up those leads and turn them into 8s. I'm Chris Hudspeth, webinar extraordinaire, and I use webinars to turn all of my leads into prospects. Much like we do with actual in-person seminars, we deliver the same information, we deliver it to the same preferred audience. We just do it in a digital autoplay form, just like Netflix. Click button, get information, and that prospect nurtures the client, helps nurture them to an 8. And I'm going to teach you all my webinar tricks right now here today for free. Is everybody ready? What we're going to cover today on this webinar is we're going to talk about what to say on a webinar, how to pick a topic, how to pick an audience, how to record your webinar, and how to nurture your leads. Do this part correctly, and you can't help but increase your AUM this year. And I don't mean increase your AUM by your existing clients putting more money with you. I mean finding new clients with new money to bring to the table. Sometimes when I present this, some folks, some financial advisors, some retirement specialists, they say, okay, I already know who my audience is. I already know what topic I want to talk about. I cover this anyway because a lot of times we allow our knowledge to get in the way. And I've done this before where I have thought, okay, I know who my audience is and I know what they want to hear. And I've been corrected before by practicing some of these simple exercises. I've been corrected. Actually, no, this is what I want to hear about. This is how to find more people like me. And if you say this, you're going to attract them to want to do more business with you. So I include this exercise in there for you. Even if you feel like you already know what you would want to say on a webinar, I throw this in there because there can be some real aha moments of, you know what, I've been saying this as a presentation piece. Maybe I want to adjust that. So we're going to include that as well. Is everybody ready? Real quickly, this is booked for 2 hours, but truthfully, I'll be done here in the next 40 minutes. Typically, whenever I give a presentation like this, it doesn't go over an hour very long. We'll have plenty of time for questions at the end. All right, first we'll start with what to say on a webinar. The biggest reason why people don't do webinars is because I don't know what to say. I don't know what presentation to give. I don't have materials. I don't know exactly what to say. Bonus secret number 2. Even people that do webinars don't always know what to say. And this is evident because have we ever been on a webinar that just didn't seem to fit? Sometimes it just didn't seem to like hit the mark, where we've been on a webinar or we participated in a webinar, but we didn't get the results that we were looking for. That happens frequently. And one reason why is because even when we do webinars, just because we do one doesn't mean the message is going to resonate. It doesn't mean that we're talking to the right audience. We could have the right audience, wrong message. We could have the right message, wrong audience. And it happens all the time. So even people that do webinars or that are comfortable doing webinars, even they don't always know exactly what to say. They might not have their audience correct in their mind. For me, I follow one simple rule with webinars. Well, I follow a few rules, but this is one. I never tell people why they should do something on a webinar. Never will I say why you should do a webinar. Like on this webinar right here, we'll use this as an example. You won't hear me talking about why we should do webinars. What you will hear me say is how we do the webinar. I never tell people why they should do something. I only tell people how to do something. And if you look at the title of this webinar, it's a how-to. And the reason that works so very well is because I never want to be in the business of convincing someone that they have a problem. And we see people in different industries do this all the time. And that is convincing people or showing evidence why someone has a problem or why they are in, why there's this thing that needs to be solved. And I never want to be in that business. What I would rather do is fill my funnel with people who are already problem aware. They already know they have a problem. Maybe even they're feeling the pain or they're feeling anxiety from that problem existing in their life. And I'm bringing the solution. So what I'm telling them is never why, but is always how. And because of that, the titles of my webinars almost exclusively start with how to do something. And that how to is to solve a problem. And the person who's attracted to that webinar is someone who is aware of that problem and is interested in my how-to solution. I never want to be in the business of convincing someone they have a problem. I only want to market to people who are problem aware. So I figure out what the problem is, and then I can now market a presentation with a compelling title of how to solve this problem. It is way easier to draw people into your webinar if you show them how to solve a problem that they already know they have. It's about more than them having the problem. We need them to know they have it, because if they know they have it, then their ears will perk up when we announce that we have a solution to that problem. If they don't know they have the problem, our message will pass right by them because they're not listening for it. So we need them to know that they have the problem that we're offering a solution for. Bonus secret number 3. The solution to their problem becomes the title of your webinar. Whatever that problem is that they are aware of, our solution to it, that becomes the title of the webinar. All right. That's where people say, okay, Chris, that sounds good, but how do I know what problem they know they have? How do I know what problem that they know they have? How can I find that out? That leads us to how to pick a topic. This part is super duper mega ultra easy. In fact, it's so easy, it's laughable. In fact, it's so easy that some financial advisors discredit this process because it's too easy. Because let's face it, we humans, we tend to overcomplicate things on purpose and sometimes subconsciously. This part, we don't have to overcomplicate. It's super duper easy and anybody can do it. How to pick a topic. Step 1, we're going to pick a product that we love to sell. It's amazing sometimes how how people overlook this. When you're designing a webinar that you're wanting to use to nurture clients in AUM, we don't focus in on a product that we love to sell. Every one of us here has a specific product or a service or a thing that we like to sell. Maybe it's because we believe in it. Maybe it's because we know it like the back of our hand. Maybe it's because it pays us well. Probably a combination of all 3 of those things generates a product or fund or service that we love selling more than anything else. Pick that product. Pick whatever that is that you love selling for whatever reason. Now that you've got that product in mind that you want, and what I also do is I'll say, okay, I love selling this product and I want to sell more of it. In fact, if all I had all day were people lined up on my calendar wanting to talk with me about this product and the problem that this one product solves for me, I would be blissfully happy because I love selling this one product that much. If you've got that product in mind, you're ready to move on to step number 2. Step 2, contact your clients who have bought that product. You can reach out to them. You can invite them for coffee. You can do a performance review, whatever. Somehow reach out to those clients who have bought that particular product. If they haven't bought that product, we don't want to contact them for this purpose. We only want to call the people that have bought this particular product that we love to sell. This one thing that we love, call the clients who bought that thing. Step 3, ask them why they bought it. People have turned entire companies around from the brink of disaster by asking 2 simple questions. What do you buy from us and why? In this case, we already know what they bought from us because we're specifically selecting a product. But asking them why they bought it and then shutting up and letting them tell the story is monumentally powerful. They're going to tell you, essentially, when you ask them why they bought it, they're telling you the problem they had and how it got solved with this product. It might take you a few. The more people that you have that bought that product, the better it is. But when you ask them why they bought it, they'll tell you why. And in that, you will learn what problem they had when they bought it and how that problem got solved with the purchase of that product. Their answer to your answer to what to talk about on the webinar. So as an example, let's say you like selling a particular fund and you talk to everybody, why did you buy this fund? And they tell you, I bought it because of this, or I bought it because it wasn't this. Whatever they say, you're going to see a pattern. And with those patterns, you're going to be able to construct, okay, these people had this issue. This was their concern when they bought this product, and this product that they bought solved the concern. Their answer to why they bought the thing you want to sell becomes what you talk about on the webinar. That's the main thing you're talking about. As you're doing this, you'll start to see, now, wait a minute, this thought will start to creep in. What about the other folks? What about my other clients who bought other products that I still enjoy selling? I'm starting to get finite here. I'm starting to constrict my funnel. If I'm dealing only with one product that I love to sell, and that's only a portion of the business that I focus on, am I leaving money on the table? What about the folks that bought other products? Resist the urge to feel that way. Odds are there is an ocean of people out there who have the problem that your clients who buy the product that you love have. And that solution that you bring to them is limiting. You will be excluding certain people that bought a different product for a different reason. But truthfully, that information and those people are for a different webinar. This particular webinar, you do want to get somewhat finite. And the reason is because to make your webinar powerful, you do need to have a specific audience with a specific problem and a specific solution to that problem. That means you're going to have fewer people on your webinar, but it also means the people that you do have on the webinar are going to be more engaged. They're going to be more enthralled with your solution, and the warming them from a 3 to an 8 will be faster and more accurate. So resist the urge to feel like, let me expand my webinar to service everybody. It's actually way better for you if you narrow it to a specific audience, the people that bought the product you love, with a specific problem that you're going to find out when you interview those folks, and the specific product, the one that you're trying to sell more of. Because let's face it, if we had our calendar full of nothing but people who want to buy that one product, we'll be happy, at least for a while. How to pick an audience. As you're doing this, as you're talking to your clients and that have purchased the product you want to sell, you're going to start to see a pattern. As you conduct these mini interviews with your clients, you'll see a pattern. You'll start to see and notice things that these buyers have in common. You might notice that many of your buyers are divorced men of this fund for whatever reason. You might notice that many of them are married. You might notice that some of them are small business owners. Maybe you'll notice that many of them are in a certain field or in a certain industry. These patterns are useful data, and we can utilize these patterns to build a client profile. This client profile is called an avatar. What I have done in the past is I have given my avatar a name that helps me give me an idea. And I've even printed this avatar of who this person is, what age they are, what's their educational background, what industry they work in, what is their marital status, how many kids do they have. All of that factors into their genetic mental makeup. And it's that mental makeup that causes them to buy or not buy certain things, because we all know when we buy something, it's all based on emotion. So if that's the case, let's get to know emotionally that person. And I like to give my avatars a name. The current avatar that I'm working on, I give the name Nancy. Once you know who your Nancy is and her problem, you are ready to develop a presentation to help her solve it. So let's say you have that worked out. Now you've done your research. I like to sell this product. And the people that buy this product are like this. This is their demographics. This is who they are. And the reason they buy this product is right here. Once you know that, now you're ready to give a presentation. And because you have that specificness down, the presentation doesn't have to be live. You can now record the presentation and broadcast that as a sales funnel to attract Nancy's into it. Now you can run ads saying, hey, if this is you, if you're a divorced mother over 40 with a divorce settlement, and you don't know how to invest it, click here. We have some answers for you. It's easier to draw that person into the funnel. You give them an easy downloadable guide in exchange for their email address. And then you invite them to a presentation that's low threshold. By low threshold, what we mean is it's super duper easy for them to get on their schedule and at their comfort level. Calling for more information, which is a common call to action, is a high threshold call to action, because now someone has to do something quote unquote painful. They have to pick up the phone, they have to call, they have to divert all their attention to this person. Submit information to get a free quote. That's painful also, because they have to fill out a form, they have to conjure up some information, they have to submit information in order to get an answer. And I think we all know as financial advisors, the number one pain point that people have in hiring a financial advisor is having to do a bunch of homework for the financial advisor in order to give financial advice. That's a big pain point people have. Low threshold is, I just want some answers. If we know who they are, if we know their avatar, and we know what likely is their problem, if we know what they know their problem is, and we offer them a solution for it, it's very easy for us to give them a low threshold answer, which is a recorded presentation, click button, watch recording. That's low threshold. All I got to do is click a button and watch this recording. Oop, I don't have time right now because the phone just rang. I'll dismiss it and I'll come back to it and watch it later. That's low threshold to them. And it works for us because it's recorded. So now it doesn't take any of our time other than the initial recording of that presentation. How to record your webinar. You can either record a live webinar where you have live audience members, what we're doing right now, or you can record a webinar with no members. You can record a webinar with nobody listening to you, just recording it. Many people, many financial advisors will opt to record a webinar with no people the first time for a few reasons. Number one, nerves. It might feel weird talking in front of people about a subject matter. But number two is out of convenience, because putting together a webinar where there's an audience and recording that, kind of hard to do. It requires a lot more effort and in some cases cooperation with other people who might have an audience. Whereas recording it the first time, once you have your presentation and you feel good about it, recording it the first time just by yourself, wherever, is a lot easier. One common tool to do this is Zoom. Zoom is the easiest way for most people to record a webinar. Do it. Pretty easy. How to record your webinar. Essentially, you're just starting a Zoom call, sharing your screen, hitting record, and that's it. It's basically you're running a meeting just like this one. You're sharing your screen just like I'm doing, but there's nobody else on the call. But you hit record. So you're recording a Zoom meeting by yourself. A couple of notes that I'll share with you. When you are recording a webinar, I highly recommend to share your screen and have your talking head along with you on the webinar. Zoom does a really good job with this. What I've found is when I record any type of video where I'm sharing my screen, any type of presentation, and I'm recording and I have my camera on, Zoom does a really good job of putting that camera, that picture of my talking head, up in the top right-hand corner of the video after I download it. So it makes it really convenient. They even put it in a great spot up in the top right-hand corner, because that's usually where the slides are emptiest. And it works great when I download that video. Now what I've got is I'm sharing my slides and I've got my talking head up in the top right-hand corner. Some of us don't like our talking head showing up on video. I highly recommend overcoming the urge to turn your camera off. Having that camera on is going to help us build rapport with the viewer of the video. That's why when we watch the news, we see talking heads behind a desk. They could easily roll B-roll footage while they're talking about whatever it is they're talking about. And sometimes they do, but not exclusively. Most of the time, the camera is on those talking heads. And the reason is because we humans bond better when we're seeing a talking head deliver the information or discuss the material. That's what we want in our webinars as well. So when we're recording a webinar, always get dressed just like you would for a in-person meeting. Do your hair, do your thing, get fresh, shaved, do whatever. Get your suit, get all polished. And then when you're delivering that webinar, even if it's recorded, even if there's nobody on it, turn your camera on and record that presentation with your camera so that they, whoever your audience is, can see your talking head. This will help them bond with you while you're delivering the solution to their problem. And what that will do is not only will it convince them to take action, but it will convince them to take action with you. We want to tell them, here's why you should take this next action, and here's why you should do it with me, is because you feel like you know me better. I gave you the information. I can trust me better. Maybe I look like your brother or something. I don't know. But you're more bonded with me than you were if my camera wasn't on. So that helps warm them up faster. Now, what you're doing here with this webinar is you're delivering a presentation that is helpful and useful. And those are key words that we want to remember when we're recording, we're creating our material. Make it helpful, make it useful. These are actionable steps that the listener can do right now. My goal at the end of a webinar presentation is when we're done with this webinar, you'll have information that you can take right now, today, and implement. You can go right now and start this process, following this process that I've just given you. And by tonight, you could be preparing a presentation that you could turn into a recorded webinar, slap on a landing page, and boom, now you're done. Roll with that webinar as if, just like you were giving a presentation, you're just doing it to an empty room. And that's the easiest way. There are some other webinar tools. There's Webinar Jam, there's GoToWebinar. I've used those as well, but I usually use them for live webinars because they have tools that are helpful to manage live webinars with many people on it. If you want to do a live webinar, you can. There's a few more moving parts to it. They're a lot of fun, and live webinars have a higher conversion rate. But the trick with live webinars is there's always a day and a time. There's a certain day and time that you have to schedule that live webinar. The recorded webinars, those are the ones that are considered lowest threshold, and that's what we want. We want to make our clients be able to push button, get recording, push button, get info, whenever, wherever they are. It could be 10 p.m. and they're in the kitchen eating a bowl of cereal, and oh, look at this, and they can watch the video. Anywhere and however they are, come as you are. That's how we want them to have that information. Recorded webinars, give that to us. Once you're finished, when you're finished with the webinar, download from Zoom the recording as an MP4 file, and you're set. And I've had really good luck with recording great looking webinars. A basic camera that costs less than $100 plugged into my computer, basic microphone that costs $100 that I have plugged into my computer. It's a great way to create good content. And when you get used to it, you'll like it so much that you might utilize that same camera microphone setup connected to your computer to create other content, maybe stuff that you'll share on social media. Once you're done with this webinar, you can have a graphics editor, a video editor, go in there and take snippets from that webinar and turn them into 60-second, 30-second clips that you can share on LinkedIn or on Facebook It's really powerful and freeing once you start doing it. Bonus secret number 4. After you record your webinar, a lot of people say, I want to put captions on the bottom of my webinar so that I can include the captions whenever I upload that somewhere. Use Descript to quickly and easily add captions to your webinar video. There are services out there, you can send it to them and they'll do it and they'll charge you a fee or whatever. Descript is a service that I pay $30 per month. And once I'm done downloading my video from Zoom, I take that MP4 file, I title it, or whatever the webinar title is, and then I'll go and I'll upload it into Descript. Descript has software that will detect what I have said, and it will create a script, basically a manuscript of everything I've said on that webinar. And then by toggling one tool, by adding the transcript in the form of captions, I can basically implant captions on my video and then resave it, re-download it, but with the captions on there. Now I've got my webinar with captions on the bottom. And you don't have to be a video editor to use it. All you have to do is go through the script. My name, Hudspeth. Descript does not know it. And so it plugs in whatever it wants to plug in there whenever I say it. So I always have to go in there and change my name, but I can, just like a Word doc, I can go in there, control find everywhere where it says this, correct it with my correct spelling of last name, and then go through there and just clean it up. What it will also do is it has a tool that it will eliminate the ums and the ahs, and times when you've said a word twice, it will eliminate those filler words and those filler sounds, and it will edit the video with those ums and ahs out of it too. It's super, super cool, but it's a great tool to use whenever to polish up your video. Once you've recorded it, put it into Descript, add some captions, and it will automatically, without you having to know how to be a video editor, clean up that video to where it's just got a little extra polish to it. And of course, those captions matter. So utilize that. It's a great place to do it. You can have a virtual assistant do it for you, whatever, but it's a good, quick, and easy way to take your video within about 1 hour. And most of that hour is the downloading of the new video file with the captions on it. But real quick, does not take long at all for you to take that recording and turn it into a more polished version with some captions on it. Now, how to nurture your leads. Now that we have a webinar, now we can take our leads and we can nurture them. We brought our leads in, we've given them a lead magnet, a guidebook, a checklist, something, whatever. Now we have their name and their email address. Now what do? We can now install a drip sequence. And what does the drip sequence say? Does the drip sequence give them a high threshold, something that's scary? Click here to schedule whatever with me? Nope. They're not ready to. They're only a 3 right now. They're not ready to schedule time with us until they're an 8. We need to warm them up to an 8. So what does our drip sequence say? All it says, every single email, is an invitation to the next step of the funnel. In this case, our webinar. The email doesn't do anything except invite them to view and collect low threshold stuff. And if that webinar is titled properly, it will trigger the person receiving the information, and they'll say, wait a minute, I'm a Nancy and I'm fearful of this, or I have this as a problem. And this is a presentation telling me exactly how I'm going to solve that problem. And I don't have to talk to anybody to get it. All I have to do is push button and watch video. Ding, ding. They love it. They will push the button, they will watch the video, and now you're giving a presentation to a preferred member of your preferred audience. It's magic. In that webinar, you're presenting to them the solution, presenting to them how to do it, and then the tail end of that webinar, once you're done, you've given them all the answer and gone through and fulfilled that which the webinar promised, which is how to solve this problem. Now you're going to give them an offer. They've warmed up to you, they've heard your voice, they've seen your talking head. Clearly, you know what you're talking about because you gave them a solution on that webinar. Now what? If you would like to take the next step, if like this thing that I just presented for you, it can be overwhelming. Like, how do I get into that fund? Or how do I buy that product? Or who do I talk to about buying that product? No worries. I am available for you to help do this because I sell this product as well. And I work closely with whatever that audience is. I work closely with those divorced men, or I work closely with people in oil and gas, or I work closely with people in this audience. I have many clients that are in this audience because I'm one of you, or I'm moved by your whatever. I work closely with that audience. If they identify as members of that audience, now they're being told that, okay, since I'm a Nancy, I need to be working with Greg over here. And to work with Greg is super easy. All you have to do is click the button below and get on my schedule, select the day and time that works for you. We'll make it super duper easy. So that invitation at the end of the webinar is that next step of the funnel, which is either a qualifying step or directly to your calendar where they would select a day and time to work with you. But now your drip sequence has real, tangible value and a low threshold answer to someone's problem. So now you're not selling. You're not selling on your emails. All you're doing is inviting them to watch a presentation of you helping to solve their problem. And sometimes these people will watch your presentation 2 or 3 or 4 times before they get warmed up to an 8 and before they get to that point where they want to reach out and talk. So it's this middle part that we have to warm them up to get them from lead to prospect. And the automated way that I do it is by creating a webinar and then utilizing my lead list, plugging them into an autoresponder, and then automatically sending them email sequences that do one thing and one thing only. And that is invite them to view the presentation, solving the problem they already know they have. So that's that part. That's it. Questions?
So I've actually taken these one week before, like not myself, but I've done where clearly it was recorded. How do you handle, if at all, is there an option to like, because I've seen some where they run at a certain time and then you pop into the end to answer questions. Is that something you ever looked at? And is there like no value in that?
There is value. Let's go ahead and consider that like a live webinar. Let's say you had a room full of 20 audience members. They were interested in the solution, and so you're delivering it. And now at the end, you're taking live questions, kind of like I am right now. If you do that, studies show that conversions increase. However, we can also utilize that for automation purposes. One of my favorite funnel gurus tells me what they did was they ran ads all week long, starting on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. They ran ads for a live webinar on Thursday. They hold the live webinar, and then they answer the questions. And then after that, they close it. And then on Friday, they send an email. Hey, if you missed the webinar, here's a recording. Saturday, hey, if you missed the webinar, here's a recording. And then they close that recording on Sunday. And then Monday, they start all over again. They run a new series of ads, attracting new people to a new live webinar that Thursday. And they do that. They repeat that every single week. Over time, the questions, they start to see a pattern with the questions. They see, okay, a lot of people are asking the same 4 or 5 questions. So what they did was they took those common questions and they reformatted the webinar to include those questions, either somewhere in the content, or they just blatantly ask the question. Now, some people ask this, and here's our answer to that at the end of the webinar. What that means is over time, what common questions your audience asks, you can embed those questions into the recorded webinar so that over time, you've got a pretty well buttoned up recorded webinar because you're touching all the main questions that people tend to ask. I know it's a long-winded answer, but what that means is that the more you work your niche audience, the more you know what common questions they have, the more you can embed those questions into the solution, into the recorded webinar. Because even though live webinars convert better, recorded webinars ultimately give you more prospects because it runs 24/7, 365.
So you're saying, hey, you could do this for a month or 6 weeks in that cadence, figure out what the common questions, and then, okay, now at this point, I figure out what most of the questions are. I can be confident saying I'm answering all the questions with a recorded one.
Yes. If the method of holding live webinars doesn't fit at the moment, what you can do is record a recorded webinar, run it, and then wait for questions to come in from the eights. The people that warm up and they come in through it, you can wait for the questions there, and you can start looking for common questions that might happen from the people that turn into prospects. That process is slower, but it's a workaround.
I did have kind of one question going back to the products, Chris. I'm a financial advisor, so I don't really necessarily say I just sell like life insurance or anything. I typically, like, my real core conversation is like helping like people transition to retirement, which isn't necessarily a product. But like, how would you narrow that down? Because I'm not like 100% into life insurance or disability. Not that I'm saying I don't. It's just like, how do you niche down from there in product sense?
Yeah, I hear you. So the product that I like to sell most myself is annuities. And with annuities, you can really go one of two different directions. And you can use annuities for accumulation, or you can use annuities for income. Most financial advisors use annuities. If they sell annuities, they'll use them for income purposes because that's what they're there for. If it's for growth, usually you'll put them in a fund or another vehicle. In my instance, what I've done is I realized that when I sell annuities, if I'm selling it for a growth purpose, I'm probably more likely to sell toward women because annuities are risk averse, and women tend to be risk averse when they're investing money. So what I've just determined is my Nancy is a high wage earner, but she's risk averse. What that means is she's probably not a business owner. She's probably a high wage earning position player in a larger company that's very stable, because if she's risk averse with her money, odds are she's going to be risk averse in life too. So when I create my Nancy, I'm thinking, okay, I'm marketing specifically to women who are risk averse. And so what if a woman comes along who isn't risk averse, who would appreciate other investment strategies that might have a higher yield that are at risk of loss? I'm excluding that person from my presentation, and almost intentionally, because this presentation is designed for the sale of this item. What that means is if your specialty is for retirement, you might wind up with more than one funnel. You might wind up with a funnel that talks specifically about how to create guaranteed income in retirement, or how to transition your investment strategies when you're no longer collecting a wage. And that's where you'll pick, okay, so what is it I like to do the most? What product or what service do I like to offer the most? And it might take a little bit of time for you to discern, but what you'll wind up is having is categories of clients. These people bought this from me for this reason, and those people bought that from me for this other reason. When you find one that you like, you know what? I would like to sell more to this group that buys this product or this service from me.
Okay, so you pick something like, how to pay fewer taxes in retirement, or you want to have more something type of specific.
Okay, so if the product that you're selling derives from that, then yes. For example, if you find that, okay, I like selling the service. The people that buy this service are people who are specifically looking to mitigate their taxes and the reason is because they have a lot of wealth, or they've inherited a lot of wealth, or a variety of other reasons. Okay, well, if that's the case, that means the problem that they are aware of is taxation in retirement. And so now your presentation might say how to avoid this taxation that most retirees face, or how to avoid this tax problem that people face once they turn this age, or once they stop earning wages. If that's the solution that you're offering, you're going to attract people who are already aware of that problem. The people that you get into your funnel are a little warmer. They're already problem aware. The process to get them from where they are to where they want to talk with you is shorter. Does that make sense? Any other questions?
Chris, what do you like to advertise? Mainly the live web.
I like to start advertisements with Facebook, and I hate that because I hate Facebook, but that's where the people are. And Facebook is so funky with me. To advertise on Facebook, you need a specialist that really knows that, someone that does that as their full-time job. So I would recommend hiring a person that does Facebook ads. But when you develop, once you get your webinar created and you have your title, now you can create cards. You can create elements that have that title in there. And you can utilize that to attract people to come into the funnel. There's two ways to do it. You can attract people with a downloadable thing, checklist, guidebook, survival guide. Those are terms that I've used before: survival checklist, survival guide. People want to survive, right? And so a survival guide or a survival checklist of this is a good downloadable thing to collect their email. And then with that email, enter them into a sequence that invites them to a recorded presentation that's super easy to get, that they can watch any old time. Sometimes people have said, why don't you make the lead magnet the presentation? Like, skip the downloadable thing and just lead them right into watching that webinar. You can do that. And I've seen people do that. The problem that I see with that is, what if this person is interested and they think to themselves, oh, I can download, that takes me 2 seconds and I can read it later, versus watch a webinar. I'm about to go into a meeting and I want to know more about it, but the time isn't right. I'll just skip it. I feel like I'm missing out on leads by directing them direct to the webinar. I'd rather have them something that's even lower threshold, like push button, get the thing delivered to your email and read it later. That's why I like what I call what are called lead magnets, things that people will easily download in exchange for their name and email address. And then I'll take that and utilize a sequence to invite them to that next step, which is the webinar. So in the direct case of advertising on Facebook going directly to the webinar, I would recommend it being live, and I would recommend it being on a specific day and time, so that now they can respond. And essentially what they're doing is they're saving their seat. That's something they can do in 30 seconds or less, 10 seconds even. They can click, oh yeah, I want to hear about that. Click and then go. And now they're registered. Their assumptiveness is they'll receive emails reminding them about the webinar, which they will. And maybe if it's a really good webinar that's well titled, maybe 60% will show up. So if you get 100 registrants, 60 will show up. But that's the way I would do that, is I would run that ad, reserve your seat, and take this free download that you'll use on the webinar, whatever. Run that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And then Thursday at whatever time, depending on what type of webinar it is. It might be a afternoon webinar. It might be an evening webinar. That'll run on Thursday usually. And you'll have, let's say, 100 people registered, 60 likely will show up, maybe 55 or so will show up. And now you've got that audience, but you've got 100 people that are in that drip sequence. And you can send them all links on Friday and Saturday to watch a recording if you wish. But at the end of that webinar is that now that they've done the webinar, the invitation, the call to action at the end of it is that next step. And that next step is either take this short quiz to see if what we've talked about on this webinar is right for you. Or if you're ready, look, I already know it's right for me, click the button down below and schedule a meeting with me. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thanks. Oh yeah. I know what you mean about getting a source for Facebook ad. Sure.
It's a real pain in the ass. I don't like doing it. It's and one problem with it is that Facebook is so big. You're literally fishing in the ocean. The fish that we want are there, but you're in the ocean. Like, where are they? How do I reach them? And how do I compete with the much bigger ships with the much bigger budgets than I have? And you can do it, but it takes a lot of work. And if you're not a Facebook ad specialist, and I am not, I want to have someone do that part for me. Yes, I can create the webinar. Yes, I can create the presentation. I can create the title. I can do all that part. But when it comes to delivering that ad out into the ocean, I need a good sea captain to do that. Any other questions, ideas, thoughts?
Hey, Chris, I've got a quick question for you. How often are you doing the webinar? Is it once a month, twice a month? What's your normal kind of routine?
Yeah, so this is where I usually get weird and talk about abundance and all the ability of us to create wealth out there. There's a lot of people. For me, after I create the avatar, there's a lot of Nancys. So I think to myself, man, if there's a million Nancys out there, I'm going to run these webinars every week as long as I'm getting some results. And a lot of it will depend on where you are in your webinar development. If you're of the idea of, I'm going to run live webinars until I get 1,000 people or 5,000 people to roll through that webinar and ask questions, so that I use those questions to tighten up my webinar to more completely answer anyone who's watching it, answer their questions. You might run that I'm going to do that for 3 months, let's say. And if I start pulling out the calculator here, let's say if I can get 200 people on a webinar, let's say, okay, 200 people on a webinar, the average cost of my registrant is $3 per registrant. So it's going to cost me $600. So if I spend $600, I probably get 200 registrants, maybe 100 to 110 will show up. So if I do that, and I want to get 5,000 people through that webinar so that I feel like I've got a lot of questions, I've rehearsed it a lot, I got a good feel for it, then I might do that 41 weeks or so. If I want to do it for only one time, for only 1,000, I might do it for 8 weeks. That might be enough. And if that's the case, now I have a recorded webinar. If it's recorded and it's running what we call evergreen, which means whenever someone encounters the invitation, they click it and it starts for them. no matter where they are, no matter what time of day it is, it automatically starts, just like Netflix. If that's the case, then I want to run that. It's ongoing. But if I'm doing a weekly webinar and I'm committed to filling my funnel, I would run it once a week until I get to the point where it's good and solid as a recording. And what some people have done, I've seen people do this too. They've ended a webinar that just had good engagement, and they've had it was a live webinar, but they had several people raise their hands, ask questions. They've had several people like request information. Maybe even one said, "I like this. I'm going to call you at the end of this." Those are great webinars. If they've recorded that live webinar, I've seen people. I'm just going to use this as my recording because there was such good engagement, and the people were asking the normal questions they get asked. I'm just going to use this, and I've seen people do that too. So you can actually utilize a recording of a live webinar as your recorded webinar that runs evergreen. If you're building up, if you're wanting to start this process and just roll at it, I would do it once a week. But if budget means or your calendar doesn't allow that, if you want to do it once every couple of weeks, you can do that. But the more frequently you are at it, the more activity it will generate, the more leads you'll get, the more clients you'll get, and the faster you will develop a really well buttoned up recorded webinar that you can now turn evergreen, and now it can run while you're on the golf course. Yeah, I would do it if it were me and I had the time and the money. I would do it once a week.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Your thoughts or ideas?
Chris, this has been great.
Hey, I hope you guys, one question I will have is, did you find the information here helpful? Did what I present here, did you get some ideas that might cause you to take some action and say, I'm going to try that? Or did you find it helpful?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yes. Good stuff.
I'm glad it's, that way I prefer you to report back to Kirk and say, who's that Chris guy? Don't bring him on again. He's just talking out of his ass. But no, it's, this is something I've always been obsessed. I enjoy it. I've been obsessed with it. Like, why do people do that? Like people that do, and they buy this thing, why did they buy that? Because if I can figure out why they bought it, I can put together a system that can help droves of other people come in and buy the same thing and automate it so that all that happens while I'm on the golf course or playing with the kids or ride the motorcycle or whatever. And then all I have to do is wait for my phone to ding. And, oh, this is Sarah Jones. She wants to talk with me because she went through the funnel. She booked a meeting at the end of the funnel. It's all recorded. And that to me that's where I want to be, is where I have all this stuff working in tandem, ads running, webinar running, emails going out, invitations, calls to action, link to my calendar, schedule some time. And then all I got to do is show up at 2:00 on Tuesday when Mrs. Jones booked the meeting, sit down, open up my Zoom call and, hey, how are you? And they feel like they already know me and the business is already halfway closed because they built rapport with me while watching the webinar. That's the winner circle for me. Everything it looks like there's a lot of automation. That's why is I want to make it so that I'm just off doing whatever I want to do and relaxing and enjoying life and not stressing and not working too much. And then I just wait for my phone to ding that, hey, I got a call later on this afternoon or tomorrow morning with somebody that came through the funnel wanting to talk about money. And I think most financial advisors, if they were in that type of setup, would enjoy it too. That's it. So feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. And I share lots, of course, at LinkedIn, I'm talking to my audience, but I also share some stuff for financial advisors, peers, and colleagues about lead generation and stuff like that because it's a passion of mine. And I like building my centers of influence. Financial advisors that don't do annuities or life insurance, or they want to work together or do joint work or things like that, long-term care policies, all kinds of stuff. I like working with people I like working with. And I'm not an AUM guy. So whenever I have a client that's looking for a mutual fund or something along those lines, I like building up my referral network. So feel free to connect with me on there, and maybe there's a chance for us to share some business.
Awesome stuff, Chris. Thanks.
No problem. Thanks so much for having me on, and happy selling out there. Hopefully you got better weather than Kirk's got, although snow is enjoyable, but I'd rather have the sunshine and the sand and the water.